Welcome back to episode 12 of the Rugby History Project. I'm your host Hattie, and today we're looking at the world's oldest international rugby competition. This is a brief history of the weird world of the Men's Six Nations. In February and March every year, the rugby world is gripped by 5 rounds of the highest level of men's European international rugby. Originally a series of unorganised men's internationals, the Six Nations now consists of a structured men's competition, an under-20s men's competition, and a women's competition, which since 2021 has run after the 2 men's competitions. There are also under-21 women's and under-18 boys and girls competitions which run in different formats. The way in which the concept of the Six Nations has expanded and developed is fitting for a competition that didn't formally start as a competition at all. It's widely accepted that the first official home nations, as the Six Nations was originally known, took place in 1883. However, this official start date is somewhat misleading and not very official either. For several years, England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales have been playing in regular yet unorganised annual matches against one another. Beginning with the first international test match between Scotland and England in 1871, the home nation series grew gradually until Wales entered the fray in 1881. The 1880-1881 season would be the first in which all 4 nations competed in international rugby. However, importantly, none of the 4 teams played all of the other 3 teams. This would first happen in 1883, where both England and Scotland played 3 games each. But it wouldn't be until the following year that the round robin was completed for the first time. Whilst 1883 is used the official start date for the contest, the stance of the Rugby Football Union at the time was that organised competitions were against the spirit of the game. In the first decade after the official start date of 1883, the competition was completed only 5 times. It wouldn't be until the RFU were forced to relinquish some control over the game that the idea of a competition in which all teams played each other was formed. In 1884 competition, England scored a try against Scotland, which the Scots believed should not have counted as the Scots had knocked the ball on. The ensuing drama led to the English stating that, as they'd invented the sport and written the law book, they were right. Unsurprisingly, the Scots refused to play the English the following year, and between 1886 and 1887, the 3 Celtic unions formed the International Rugby Football Board. The aim of the board was to govern without bias, and for the IRFB to be the true lawmakers of the game. The English refused to join. They stated it was because they had more clubs than the other countries, but with their rather blunt expression just 2 years previously, it was clear that they really just didn't want to relinquish control. In 1888 and 1889, the 3 Celtic nations refused to play the English due to their refusal to join the IRFB. After the admission of the English to the IRFB in early 1890, with the caveat that the English retained 6 board seats to each Celtic nations too, the home nations returned at full strength, but this time with a slightly more organised feel. The 1890s would bring about major change to the home nations. One of the first acts of the IRFB was to change the scoring system. Beginning with the 1891 home nations, it was agreed between all 4 nations that 1 point would be given for a try, an additional 2 if the try was converted, and 3 points for a drop goal or a penalty. Scoring before this was slightly convoluted. Initially, rugby rules dictated that the placing the ball over the line simply allowed you to try and kick a goal for a single point. This means that a team that scored 10 tries but converted none would draw with a team that had not crossed the line once. In late 1875, it was decided that tries scored could be used as a tiebreaker, but it wouldn't be until the formation of the IRFB that thorough discussions would be held in regarding to scoring. Whilst the 4 nations all agreed that conversions should be worth 2 points and drop goals and penalties 3, the Scots were in favour of awarding 2 points for a try rather than 1. This meant that the individual game results for the 1890 home nations were reported differently in Scotland than in the other 3 countries, causing issues for historians such as John Griffiths later down the line. The 1891 competition is the first in which all 4 countries used the new IRFB regulations on scoring. A try would later be increased to 3 points during the 1894 competition, whilst drop goals and conversions changed their points value variously throughout the period. The second of the big changes was the introduction of the concept of the Triple Crown. The first usage of the term was in the Irish Times on the 12th of March 1894, after Ireland recorded wins over England, Scotland and Wales during that year's competition. This was the first time that Ireland had completed the feat. England, however, had done it 3 times, and Wales and Scotland once each. Whilst the title continues to be contested between the 4 nations to this day, a physical trophy for the Triple Crown was not created until 2006. The physical Triple Crown plate was introduced by the then sponsor, the Royal Bank of Scotland. Games against France took place as early as 1906, with England beating France 35-6. Wales and Ireland would take on Les Bleus for the first time 2 and 3 years later, respectively. The official introduction of France to the home nations and the renaming of the tournament to the 5 nations took place in 1910. It wouldn't be until 1957, however, that a name would be given to the feat of winning every game in the tournament. The Times' Yule Titley coined the term after England completed the feat. Other journalists, such as the Daily Telegraph's Michael Melford, also used the term in their reports at the time. Like the Triple Crown and Wooden Spoon, Grand Slam wins were backdated to include the wins prior to the coining of the term. This leads Wales to hold the honour of achieving the first ever Grand Slam. Whilst England won the 1910 competition, albeit without a Grand Slam due to a draw against Ireland, Wales had not only completed the Triple Crown in 1908 and 1909, but they had also beaten France in both years in supplementary games. In recent years, the Grand Slam has become a more official part of the tournament, as from 2017, a team that achieves a Grand Slam is awarded 3 bonus table points. This ensures that the Grand Slam winners cannot be overtaken in table points by a team that has won fewer games, and ensures a Six Nations victory for those who complete a Grand Slam. Whilst the Triple Crown and Grand Slam have become official parts of the Six Nations, the most notorious accolade is not an official part of the competition at all. In the 19th century, it was tradition for the University of Cambridge student with the lowest maths exam score to be given a literal wooden spoon. Unsurprisingly, with the status of rugby in Britain during the late 19th century, the term was introduced as the award for the team that came last in the home nations. There is some debate on the first usage of the term, with some claiming it was first used in 1894 by a journalist from the South Wales Daily Post, whilst others have claimed it was first used 2 years earlier by the Reverend F. Marshall in his book Rugby Football. If the first usage of the term was in fact in 1892, it means that the award for last place is the oldest trophy in the competition. Expansion of the Five Nations was hotly debated from the readmittance of France after World War II. The French had been removed from the competition in 1932 due to complaints surrounding professionalism, but had returned after war break in 1947. The Oaks of Romania were firmly the best non-Five Nations side in Europe in the latter half of the 20th century. With wins over France, Scotland and Wales, as well as a draw against Ireland, Romania was the obvious choice to expand the competition. However, Romania's political situation caused issues for those in Western Europe. Between 1947 and 1989, Romania was under a communist government. Upon gaining power in 1965, leader Nicolae Ceausescu controlled the country in one of the most repressive regimes in modern history. The traditionally conservative rugby leadership in Western Europe bristled at the prospect of getting into bed with the Romanian Rugby Federation, who were also not so secretly playing players, but understood that it was important to stop Romanians defecting to rugby league. The 6-year period between the fall of communism in 1989 and the advent of professional rugby in 1995 saw the greatest highs and lowest lows for Romanian rugby. Whilst they recorded wins against France and Scotland during this period, they were preceded by the deaths of at least 5 players on Christmas Day 1989 during the Romanian Revolution. Among the dead was 70-cap international and captain Florica Maireru, who was shot dead in the street by an army reservist. His family and the public learned of his death when his body was shown on television later this evening. The other 4 confirmed dead rugby players were Petra Astafai, Bogdan Stan, Christian Toporan and Florin Butchery, who were all members of the 1989 team, as well as the 1970s legend Radu Dorbac. With state sponsorship of sport waning in the post-Ceausescu era and the adoption of professionalism by the rest of the rugby world, the advantages Romania had seen in the 70s and 80s were no longer there. Whilst Romania fought for the admission to the highest level of European competition, it would be Italy who finally cracked the top tier. After a series of close wins for the Azzurri over Scotland, France and Ireland during the late 1990s, the Men's Six Nations was born. Italy's poor results in the Six Nations have called into question their participation. However, it should be said that France also struggled initially. France's first championship win was in 1954, in their 25th year of participation. In 2026, it was announced that France and Ireland would be competing for the Solidarity Trophy, the 8th rivalry trophy awarded in the competition, and the 5th introduced in the 21st century. The original and arguably most important rivalry trophy in the Six Nations is the Calcutta Cup. First awarded in 1879 at Raeburn Place, the Calcutta Cup had originally been donated by the Calcutta Rugby Football Club, a club formed by former rugby school pupils and British Army soldiers living in Kolkata. The club was disbanded in 1878, and the club decided to create a trophy in memoriam. The trophy is made of 270 silver rupees and was donated to the Rugby Football Union, originally to be a trophy for a Challenge Cup style competition. However, as discussed previously, the RFU were distinctly opposed to any form of organised competition, leaving the trophy to be used for an annual international match against Scotland from 1879. Throughout the years, the battle for the trophy has primarily existed on the pitch. However, in 1988, following a 9-6 win for England at Murrayfield, the trophy was significantly damaged by players from both teams. England's Dean Richards was given a 1-match ban by the RFU, while Scotland's John Jeffrey was handed a 6-month ban by the SRU for his part. Legend has it that the trophy was used as a ball in a street game during the post-match drinks. The original trophy now resides permanently at the World Rugby Museum as it's too fragile to be moved. Both nations now own replicas of the trophy, and these are the trophies that are lifted by players after the match. The remaining 7 trophies have all been introduced in the last 50 years. The Millennium Trophy, England and Ireland, was introduced to the 5 nations in 1989, after first being played for in a special match in 1988 to celebrate Dublin's millennium. In the same year, the Centenary Quake could be competed for by the Scots and Irish to celebrate a century of the International Rugby Football Board, now known as World Rugby. Interestingly, Wales is not a part of this contest, despite also being a founding member. The Giuseppe Garibaldi Trophy, France and Italy, was introduced in 2007. The All Alliance Trophy, France and Scotland, and the Dodi Weir Cup, Wales and Scotland, both in 2018, and the Cutita Cup, Italy and Scotland, in 2022, and the Solidarity Trophy, Ireland and France, in 2026. Of the newest 5, 3 represent individuals, Giuseppe Garibaldi, Dodi Weir and Massimo Cutita. 1 commemorates those who lost their lives in World War I, the Old Alliance, and 1 represents historic links between the 2 nations, the Solidarity Trophy. Only the Solidarity Trophy is used in both the men's and women's Six Nations. One of the most bizarre facts about the Six Nations is that a physical trophy would not be awarded to the winners of the competition until 110 years after its inception. The original trophy was commissioned by the then Earl of Westmoreland, who would die just 6 months after it was first awarded in 1993. The trophy had 15 sides, 1 for each player, and was designed to hold 5 bottles of champagne, 1 for each of the 5 nations. The trophy was replaced just 22 years later as it felt it no longer represented the championship correctly due to the championship expansion and due to internal corrosion caused by champagne. The new trophy consists of 6 sides, 1 for each country, although there's no official word on its champagne capacity. Across its 143-year history, 131 editions of the Six Nations have started and 120 of those have been completed. Despite constant speculation, Six Nations CEO Tom Harrison officially confirmed in February 2026 that there were no official plans for expansion and confirmed that promotion and relegation for the contest was off the table. Whilst the rest of the rugby world is rapidly changing with the introduction of the Nations Championship and the pause of the Rugby Championship, it seems that the Six Nations will remain consistent. There is a significant amount of strange anecdotes and cultural events which have been glossed over or excluded entirely from this episode. For a full history of the competition would just be extremely lengthy. In fact, Terry Godwin's book, The International Rugby Championship, 1883 to 1983, comprises of a whopping 498 pages. I hope this episode was able to cover some of the bigger tales and offer some explanations into the foundations of the tournament in what is actually my second episode about the competition. If you'd like to read or listen to the first, you can find my episode or the article on Spain in the Six Nations down below. If you'd like more regular updates, please check out my Instagram, Twitter and or Blue Sky. You can also catch me podding every Tuesday morning with Rap, and also recently I recorded the first episode of the 2nd season of Women's Rugby Treehouse. Again, links down below. I'd also like to thank my good friend Anchor for attempting to help me with the Romanian pronunciations for the audio and visual versions of this post. I'm really sorry, Anchor, if I've messed them up. And a written version of this episode is also available on my website, therugbyhistoryproject.com, which is also where you can find all my references, footnotes, etc, etc. And if you would really like to, you can upgrade to Historian tier to help the project. Or just subscribe here for free. That also works. I appreciate that. Anchor's going to kill me if I fuck that up.